Today, we're end capping our giving series, and we call this Giving Sunday. We're talking about all that God has done. And I want to share with us real quickly, Nancy's going to actually help me in a little bit, come up here and share some of the stories that we've been able to make happen because of your generosity, because of your giving. But I want to read a few verses, and I'm going to begin with the verse that we've been using as the text for this whole series, and it's Romans chapter 12. And it says this: in his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is encouraging others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have the gift of showing kindness to others, do it gladly. Don't just pretend to love others, really love them. Hate what is wrong, hold tight to what is good, love each other with genuine affection, and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. I like that word, enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope, be patient in trouble, and keep on praying. Someone told me this week, I got to stop there. It says, be patient and keep on praying. One of the ladies, if Pat and Bob are watching us online, we love you. They've been out for 4 straight weeks. I went to check on them to see if they became Methodists. I didn't know where they'd been. And she goes, we have never missed 4 weeks in a row of church. And they're very upset about it. So she asked the lady, she goes, I know you're praying for me, but pray harder. I love that. Pray harder. Keep on praying. I like that's why it says keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. So we talked about having generous hearts. We talked about generous hearts is serving with love, serving with our hands, generous with our hands, and generous with our finances. And I want to read this, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, because what I want to talk to you for just a few minutes, I'm not going to preach a whole sermon, just kind of a sermonette, a devotion, if you will, because I want to talk about having margins in your life, the importance of margins. 2 Corinthians 9:7, I'm reading from the Living Bible, which I don't always do, but I love how it says it. Everyone must make up his own mind as to how much he should give. Don't force anyone to give more than he really wants to, for cheerful givers are the ones God prizes. God is able to make it up to you by giving you everything you need and more. So it will not only be enough for your own needs, but I want you to read this last part, but plenty left over to give joyfully to others. Plenty left over. Now, obviously this is about money, but I think this applies to this whole series we just did on generosity. We need margins in our life. We need time margins. I wrote these down. We need time margins. What do we do with time margins? Number one, time margins allow us to pause with the Lord. If you are the type to set your alarm to 10 minutes, if you're a teenager, before you leave the house, you don't have any margins to pray, to read the Bible, to brush your teeth. You're like, boom, 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 out the door. And then you get in the car and you turn on the radio, you turn on the podcast, noise, 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 noise. You get to work. You leave, you have to run this errand and do this errand, and you come home and blah, 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 blah. No space, no time. What happens if God wants to do something in your day? Well, he needs to schedule that 2 weeks out because I don't have any room, I don't have any time for that. How about relationship margins? Time for people. Making space for people, making time, saying maybe we're going to say a night a week is going to be our connection night. We're going to find opportunities to connect with people, maybe after church to connect with people. Relationship margin. And how about this money margin? Americans are great at spending more than they make. So you make 50, you spend 60. You make 75, you spend 85. You make 100, you spend 110. There's no margin. There's not plenty left over. Well, part of it is you have to discipline yourself. We have to discipline ourselves to have margins so that if God says, hey, I want to interrupt your regularly scheduled day to do something, you say, I have space for it. I want you to think about it. I'm going to read a verse from 2 Kings in a second. But I want you to think of the stories of the Bible. Do you ever remember the verse where it says Jesus was in a wicked rush? He was so hurried. He was running from appointment to appointment. It seems like anyone could interrupt Jesus anytime, and they'd stop him. It says he was on the way somewhere, and someone approached him. He saw someone was sick. He saw someone was dead. Someone asked him a question. He never said, listen, I can't. I have to get to the temple. I'm sorry. I had this whole Sermon on the Mount thing I'm doing. I got to get there. It seemed like he was never rushed. His friend dies. It takes him 3 days to get there. They're like, where you been? He's like, oh, I was, talking to folks. Unrushed. And what's the importance of this? So many of the stories of the Bible would not be in the Bible if Jesus was as efficient as he was in me. Racing here and there and everywhere. Never pausing to say, hey, look there's a flat tire. My wife drives her nuts. If there's a car accident, if it's a flat tire, we don't have time. I'm going to pull over anyways. I'm going to pull over because you never know what God might do in those moments. You're walking out of the grocery store and there's someone homeless sitting there. I know what you're thinking. You got to get home. You got to get dinner going. But there's part of your heart that's like, what? It's 5 minutes. I'm going to pause. I'm going to have some margin here to connect with people. This was the whole thing of the Sabbath rest, is that there was 6 days to work, 1 day to rest. There was a rhythm. And can I tell you what the Jewish people would have to do? They would have to prepare for 6 days to take that day off. So the laundry would have to be done on Saturday. The house would have to be cleaned on Saturday. The bills cleaned on Saturday. The meals made on Saturday. So when the Sabbath came, they could enjoy the Sabbath. It was a discipline. And so even when people get saved, I start to preach to them, we have a different understanding of the Sabbath, but I still think there's an established rhythm that's a healthy rhythm, which is 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. Why? Margin. It's having margin. And I realize this, God does his miracles in the margins of my life. Yes, he does some of it during my schedule. People come and they make appointments scheduled. I have a funeral, I have a wedding, I have these, and God can do things in those moments, but I find out that sometimes it's a random phone call that I wasn't expecting. It's stopping to talk to someone at the grocery store that I wouldn't expect to talk to. It's margins, and we have to make that space. Now, 2 Kings chapter 4 says this. She said to her husband, I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. She was talking about Elisha. And Elisha, the Bible, the Old Testament is filled with what we call types and shadows. Elisha was a type of Jesus. He was a type because he fed the hungry, he healed the sick, he cleansed lepers, he did these things with Jesus. And she recognized him, not as you would say a preacher is a man of God, but she's like, this is a prophet. He is an oracle of God. She said, let's make a small room on the roof and put in a bed and a table and a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay with us whenever he comes to us. One day Elisha came, and he went up to his room to lay down there. And he said to his servant Gehazi, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. And Elijah said to him, tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can we be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army? She replied, I have a home among my own people. What can be done for her? Elijah said, Gehazi said, she has no son, and her husband is old. Then Elijah said, call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. And he said this, about this time next year, Elijah said, you will hold a son in your arms. No, Lord. She objected, please, man of God, don't just mislead your servant. But the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about the same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. I love this story. This guy would come to town, and she would see miracles. She would see something going on with him, and she thought, you know what? I want a space for this guy to stay at our house. I love this. It's such a picture of God. Are you making space in your house? Listen, if God is going to go park somewhere in Leesburg for the night, I want him to stay at my house. How about you? If God wants to use someone, I want him to say, hey, the Shillings made a space for me. I bet you I can go to the Shillings. I bet you they have time. They have a little extra money. They have a little extra love in their hearts. And so she makes this space. And, if you ever have a guest room, the guest room is usually the nicest room in the house. No one can touch it. If you have little kids, don't go in there. It's the guest room. You know what I mean? There's towels you're never supposed to use. I found out the hard way. Those are the guest towels. I'm like, well, where's the owner's towels, And it's the old ones, It's the guest room and the door is closed, and so you're waiting. A lot of times it's unoccupied, but the time that someone wants to come, there's a space. Listen, is there space in your house, figuratively, literally, for Jesus to come? Or if he comes and goes, oh, you don't have time, oh, you don't have space, you don't have mental energy, he might just move on. I never want God to go past our house. I want him to come into our house because you know what? He might just do a miracle with me, and he might do a miracle, listen, through me for somebody else. And that's what happened with Elijah, and this is why it is so important, even as we go into the holiday season. We have Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all these things. People are in a weird, funky headspace. It's a double-edged sword. Some of it's joy, and there's a lot of sorrow that comes with the holidays. People are missing people. Relationships that are broken, you feel it more during Christmas. Uncle so-and-so should have been here. I wish my dad was still talking to us. He should be here. Or maybe someone's passed on, and there's so much opportunity for us to shine the light of Christ to our neighbors, but do you have time? And it's so funny. I thought when you retire, things slow down. I bet a bunch of you, I don't even know how you had time to work. You're so busy as a retired person. Days are full, so you would think you'd slow down. Some of you slow down a little bit, but I want to encourage from the young to the very old, make space, make time so that God can move in your life and through your life. And I'll tell you what, God has really moved through our church this year in so many amazing ways. It's only my first year being here, but I've been so overwhelmed by the generosity of this church and how the church has received both me and my family, and also some of the things we've done together. I have some things I want to review. One is, I think of that big giveaway we did. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff we gave away. I don't know if we have pictures up there or not, but we gave over 200,000 to our community. The National Day of Prayer, that was amazing. That's going to be an annual event that our church is going to sponsor, and it was wonderful. Rhonda put it together in how long, Rhonda? It was fast. And it still was an amazing success. So now we have a whole year to plan simple things like new AC, which you're really not concerned about this morning, but you're generally concerned about that stuff. And God has blessed us with a brand new 36 by 36, 450-pound baby. She's beautiful. She's out back. We made improvements. I want to thank Carson for the cement pad we put out back. It looks brilliant for the kids. We helped Rod Davis, who's in the Dominican Republic, and he get eye surgery, and much needed eye surgery, and we thank the church for that. We also began supporting people on a monthly basis. One of the people we support is Khalil Tucker, who oversees FCA, and we have a short video from him.
To the Good News Church family, we're so grateful for your partnership as we go into the Thanksgiving season. I'm thankful for partners like you that help us to do what we do on the campuses of Lake and Sumter County. Just a few highlights of some of the things that's going on. We just recently had a Topgolf event. It was a fundraiser, but our athletes were able to come and attend and be celebrated. And one of the Leesburg students, a football and soccer player, described what he's seeing on his campus as a Jesus revolution. And that just blessed my heart to hear that God is alive and moving on our campuses. We also recently had a worship night at Lake Mineola, hosted and led entirely by the students. That idea has started a fire, and so we are now having East Ridge High School host one at Southern Hill Farms on December 6th. And so you all are welcome to attend that worship night, again, led by the student leaders. But even one of the Lake Mineola students is helping one of the Taveri students to get a worship night going hosted by their high school. And so get to be at the front seat of discipleship opportunities popping up all over the place, and it's exciting. And so again, we just play a catalyst and support role in that, just finding those leaders, engaging them, equipping them, and empowering them to be able to go forward and do the ministry. And so we're just really proud of our students. We're really blessed by what's happening on our campuses. And again, it just doesn't happen without someone in my position and some of the staff that I have working alongside me to be able to light a fire under the coaches and athletes on the campuses. So that's all thanks to you and your generous hearts Thank you so much, Pastor Mark. Thank you so much, Nancy Hunter. Thank you so much, Dana Cruz, and all of the others that have just stepped up to come alongside ministries like us to be able to help us do what we do. You are truly a ministry that extends outside of the walls, and we're just so thankful for you.
It's awesome, yeah. I just got to know him this year and got to sit at they have a major donors luncheon in Orlando, and he invited us, me and my wife, to come as a representative of the church, and to see just the team of amazing FCA representatives and the work that they do. They are really in the trenches with the teams in the schools doing the Lord's work, and it's just a blessing to be able to support him on a monthly basis. We also are supporting an international worker. You met Lynn. She was here last year, and she has been just so blessed by our generosity to her. The stories that she shares are just Old Testament, meeting with people that are just so far away from what we understand of God. And she has a short message for us as well this morning to thank us for our support.
Hi, good morning, Good News Church. This is Lynn coming to you from the Middle East, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for all of your support, for every prayer that you pray and all that you've given to back me and to sow into the kingdom work being done here in the Middle East. It really means a lot to me, and it really is making an impact. So thank you so much.
Awesome, yeah. She's right in the thick of it where so many people don't know God, and so we're able to support her. I'm just thankful there's amazing stories like this that are just fantastic, but then there's just the practical reality that as a church we want to be fiscally responsible and conservative in some ways, but also generous whenever we can be generous with people and mission and vision. And so we've been really effective this year in doing that. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Miss Nancy, who's going to share some more stories of what's gone on this year. Miss Nancy.
Good morning. This has been a year. Wow. Just trying, he's like, oh, take all the time you want. I'm thinking, yeah, right. I just want you to know, we are becoming known as the little church that gives big. I don't think that people in today's world are used to generous hearts, and this church is filled. I want you to know that your tithes, I want you to know that your board prays over your tithes. We investigate giving situations, and we work hard to do what the Bible tells us to do in helping to take care of the needs of those around us. I appreciate when Pastor Mark came in, having such a love for our community before he met our community. I told him, I said, I'm your girl. I can tell you about our community. I've been here a long time. Some examples. It's amazing how God puts things in right in front of your face. And the message that he's kind of stuck with me all week long is I'm starting to hear people say, it just doesn't feel like the holidays this year. It just doesn't, my children are away, my grandchildren are busy, my mama. And the first thing that comes to my mind every time is, think about doing something for somebody that you never, ever would think about doing something for. You're going to start feeling the holidays. God's going to fill your heart with a joy that is hard to explain. But I just want to go through a very quick year. God tells us to take care of our own. And some of the things that we've done this year is that we have helped some families in the church that just had unexpected things come up. These are people that normally have always done their own thing, and they say, no. And God put it on the heart of Pastor Mark and the board to help some of our families out. So that has been a true blessing to us, to be able to use your tithe and help our own. God, the Bible tells us to do that. I want to go through quickly some community efforts. E3 Family Solutions is a group that it's a nonprofit that works tirelessly with our young people in schools. We've been able to gift them and support them during their latest fundraiser. And what I've seen going out into the community, they inform teens about things that are out there attacking our kids that we don't even know are there. And things like drug trafficking, sex trafficking, things on the internet that catch our kids into it. They work tirelessly about that, and they are changing. I think I said one time before when we were talking about it, there was one girl that got the guts after listening to a lesson from E3. She told on her abuser, and last year during the summer, or this past summer, he received life in prison. So these kind of things that are attacking our teens are so important. At Father's Day, we had Flowers for Fathers. This is a group of young men that are encouraging the fathers in our community to stay involved in the lives of their family, not just leave it up to the mothers. We work with local churches on some of their efforts. Backpack events, the Christian Care Center always has their baby bottle event. One Sunday morning a few weeks ago, after a storm hit North Florida, I saw a post on Facebook where Trinity Assembly was going to go up the very next morning and take a trailer they had and fix meals, and they were in need of a freezer. Well, I texted Mark and a board member really early. I'm sorry, Dave. Said, what can we do? They need a freezer. And by that afternoon, our church had provided a freezer for them to take up, and they fed families that had no way of getting food. And our church was a part of that because you guys have allowed us to do those things. That same community, Perry, Florida, the storm, they were hit by 3 storms in a little over a year. The year before, our board wanted to send some support up there, and I called the sheriff's department, and they said, well, I'm supposed to tell you to donate to the state of Florida, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, let me change my question. Tell me a church that is helping your people. And the lady turned to the lady and said, what was the name of that church you were just talking about? There was a tiny church out in the rural community that was blocked off from everything else, and they were power. They had power. They allowed the community to come in and sleep on their pews. They got food trucks in there by a miracle of God, and we provided money for them to buy food to feed the people that had absolutely nothing. These people not only lost their homes, they lost their jobs. They're people that work in that rural community. And the pastor's daughter sent us a letter that said, this had to come straight from God. Thank you for caring enough about us up here. So, we've talked about the food bank. I just want to remind you too, next Sunday, somebody told me that the last couple of times our bags have been kind of slacking out there. Put it on your phones right now. Take your phones out. Put them out there. I forget all the time. It's just so much to remember. Next Sunday, I hear they need toilet paper. Get it. Put it in the back of your car. It won't spoil. All right. Missionary projects. We've been helping. We talked about Lynn. Global Hope. It's an agency that is near and dear, especially to some of our board members. And they do things like the Cuban Children's Relief, Florida Sheriff's Ranch Children's Fund. They help all kinds of things. We've been able to do that. TEARS, which is the evangelism group in the Dominican Republic. So it's not just right here in town that we're reaching out. Something near and dear and something God seems to be placing all the time are our schools. It's difficult. We have a lot of people in education in our congregation, and we've been able to make an impact. And Pastor Mark and I have been so blessed in the past couple of weeks and over time. We've started from the college down. Gary Christensen found out over the tornado that hit Tallahassee, FSU, you don't think of a college campus having a food bank. They lost everything. They lost power. They lost their freezers. I think they lost part of their building. Gary actually went up and volunteered to help them up there, and we sent a check. And just to be able to feed, because a lot of those children were stuck there, unable to get home to their families. So God just keeps pointing out these things. We've done things with projects at Leesburg High School. One of the things we did, and it sounds like oh, what's that? But we provided a meal to the football players before one of their games. Pastor Mark was able to go in and spend a few minutes ministering to that group of young men, the love of God. And we're very fortunate that we have a football coach now that is just as interested in the hearts of these young men as he is the winning football games. And Pastor Mark said it was amazing to sit there, but these people know that our church is there to support our kids. Another thing, a couple of weeks ago, we have several people at our church that work at Lady Lake, or the Villages Elementary, which is the public school, not the charter. And we found out about a young man, a fifth grader, who lost his father. We have been able to work with Rita Gale, their guidance counselor, who just goes above and beyond with everything. But this man was the sole breadwinner of the family and died suddenly with no warning. And we were able to help with rent and electricity, and even we paid for the young man to be able to play soccer. That's the only thing of all the things the mother listed that wasn't an absolute necessity, and her not sure what she was going to do. As she said, the only thing he really likes to do is to play soccer on the Lady Lake soccer team. So we paid his registration fee, and we're waiting for a pair of cleats to come in right now. And Mark and I are going to go up and share with the mom just how much I didn't do that. No, just share the love of Jesus with this. One thing that we've done is we have kind of adopted Leesburg Elementary, which is just right down the street, a couple of miles here. And we worked with a student last year that had family had trouble. And this year, the school started out with tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And it was unbelievable things. They lost 2 students, one at the end of the summer, one at the very beginning of the school year, within the first few weeks. Tragic deaths. 5 employees lost their parents they weren't expecting to lose. They had an assistant principal that they had there for a couple of years. She died of cancer. They reached out to us on a Monday and said, "Do you think you could come tomorrow afternoon for a prayer meeting?" Well, Mark and I got busy. I called every pastor I knew, went to school with, ever worked with, whatever. And they called pastor groups. Mark said, "I'll be there." We had to go in after school hours. The faculty that believed and wanted, they came. We had prayer warriors from all over this city. What do you say? Hundreds? 80 or 100 people, folks. In that cafeteria, we had a prayer meeting. Let me tell you something. I haven't been to a prayer meeting. There were Pentecostals and there were Baptists and there were non-denominational pastors that were there praying for that school and the grip hole of the devil that seemed to be wanting to take them down. That would never have happened 5 years ago. God got us in there and we prayed, and the people that were there saw what this church is about. We had organizations that I don't even know how they found out about it, but they were there praying. It was something. So what we decided is we're going to kind of just keep an extra eye out on them, and we've provided things. They are so appreciative. They kind of are a huge school that goes forgotten. They are not they are very diverse, as Mark and I found out. But one of the things, and it's one of, Mark and I have already had our Christmas week before last. They had a fundraiser, and this has always been a heartache for me. Have you ever felt left out? I mean, I could probably ask each one of you from a childhood experience, when were you left out of something? I didn't grow up having God always took care of our needs, but there was never a lot of extra in our family. And I can remember times where I didn't do things. So last year, they have a fundraiser where Kona Ice, the ice machine with the sticky syrup, they do it, and the parents send in $3. They take part of the money. Kona Ice gets part of the money. And they do this fundraiser every year. Well, I knew my grandchildren there, they were going to have parents that send in money, and God just put on my heart. So a year ago, I decided I'm just going to go down here with some money, and I'm going to pay for these kids. I ran out of money. It was, I just, and I'm not one of those with an app that I can put it on there. I'm like, I don't have any more cash. But I paid all the way up to 3rd grade, because there's always those kids that are sitting back in the classroom knowing what everybody else is doing out there. So I brought it up to our board, and they're like, do it. You want to see a grown, muscular, tough pastor shed tears? You need to go and experience little kids. The ones that didn't pay, it was a little bit more than what we expected, but the ones that didn't pay just got at the end of the line. And I was bending down saying, 2 flavors, 2 flavors, 2 flavors. I couldn't stand up straight when it was over. Mark was handing out spoons at the end of the line, and he was getting the thank yous, because those kids at the end of the line couldn't really trust that they were going to get one, because they'd been left out time and time and time again in their life. And when those little 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds came through, and they're looking, and they're still not trusting when we're I said, pick 2 flavors, pick 2 flavors. And they would look at me and say, thank you. And when they would walk down to Mark and take that spoon, they would look up with these little eyes and say, thank you, because they knew. Nobody else knew that somebody else bought theirs, but they did. There were a couple of times where it was too much. It was like Mark was planning on staying about 45 minutes, and after about 3 hours, he looked down the line from the Kona truck, and he said, how many kids go to this school? I said, I think around 900. He's like, whoop, okay. So I think he had to text somebody and say he wasn't going to be somewhere, but we had that time. And the look and the change, and I'm telling you the story for this. On Sunday after this, I was in the grocery store, and I ran into a former student, 3 kids, 2 little girls and a boy. And she's like, kids, this was my favorite teacher in middle school. This is Miss Hunter. And the one little girl just keeps looking at me and looking at me. And she said, you were my mom's teacher? And I said, yeah. I swear it's not me. So somebody's doing that because it's 11:01. Okay, so this one little girl looks at me and she goes, I know you. And I said, you do? She said, you bought me Kona Ice last year. And I said, yeah, I did. And she said, thank you. She said, it made me so happy. She said, I was so happy. She said, my mama didn't have the money for me to get one, and you bought it for me. Why? I said, because Jesus told me to do it. And she said, well, tell him thank you too. And I did. So it may seem, if you look on our budget and see Kona Ice, know that it touched so many little children to be able to do it and to know. And then the teachers all found out the next day that it was a church that did it. And I met with them this week. We are giving out applications for teachers to nominate people who they know have a serious need here at Christmas time. And I met with the faculty, and over again, they thanked me, because a lot of times teachers were paying for those things out of their pockets, and not all of them had the money to do it. So you guys have made such an impact with them. I think what my goal this next year is that we're not the little church giving, that we're the growing church that gives even more. Know that everything is prayed over, everything is considered. And if you have a need of somebody that you know, find a deacon, find a board member, and let us know about these things, because it's very difficult. And I just have to thank you all and appreciate letting us do all that we've done with our tithe from Good News.
Thank you, Nancy. Awesome. As she said, we're going to be doing this outreach for Christmas. And on the tithe and the giving envelopes, if you want to give above and beyond to Missions and Mercy, you can. we already have it in the budget to do, but I know some people say, I still want to help. You're welcome to do that, but we always say it's not in place of your giving. It's if God puts in your heart to give more, you're welcome to do that. Let's stand to our feet. I want to pray. I want to just thank God with you as your pastor and pray over our area. Lord, we love you so much. We just thank you that we've had the chance to represent you, Jesus, in practical ways in this area. Lord, I just pray that you would continue to open up doors of opportunity for us to shine the light of Jesus in practical ways, in the same way that you met practical needs, Lord, to open the door to people. Lord, I pray that we would be able to meet practical needs so the gospel could be heard and seen. Lord, I pray a blessing over this region. Lord, I pray a blessing over Lake County, a blessing over that school. Lord, I just pray that you would bless every person here, Lord, even as we end with one more song of worship. We remind ourselves that all that we have, our time, our talent, our treasure, it's from you and it's for your glory. We thank you, Lord.